welcome to Unleashed. We are so glad to have you back again this week. And this week is going to be kind of lining up with the NFL season, the college football season. You know, you try to look at some of these podcasts and think, what can I put out there that guys would want to actually stay tuned in for? And hopefully this is going to be one of those weeks. Eric, before we get started, what do you got this week? We always do a question each week. If you haven't picked up, maybe you're new to this, that's okay. But we always start with some question, and sometimes irrelevant, and sometimes I'm irrelevant. So,
hey, we have a couple really good ones here. CJ Adams wants to know, our life displays our priorities for all to see and know. What priority is our life displaying for all to see and know? Did we hit or miss the mark?
Ooh, yeah. I think hitting the mark for me is really understanding that I can't do this life on my own by trying harder. I can't fix my own stuff. I'm not trying to get deep real fast here, but I think when I get to understand what grace really looks like, and I walk in that and I offer it to other people, I think I've hit the mark. I don't think it's that performance-based stuff that so many of us maybe were raised with, because it's what Jesus' performance was. No, not mine.
Yeah.
I think hitting the mark is living love, living grace, those things. So that's what people need to see.
Absolutely. And because we did this a little different, I actually just want to go through all these questions.
Yeah.
We can just hit them all briefly. And Greg Giles would like to know, what makes you laugh? What makes you cry? And that can be for you and Ken both.
Wow, what makes me laugh? What makes me cry? I'll take one. What would you like? By the way, we'll get in here in a second, but we've got Ken Dodson in the studio, and he's been a friend of mine for a long time, and he's got a pretty amazing story. But which one would you want? I mean, let me just set the stage here. The guy sitting across the room from me, just up until he had surgery here a couple of months ago, he was still benching over 500 pounds. And now he's almost as old as I am, which is as old as asphalt, so that's pretty old. But which one do you want? You want laugh or cry?
Cry.
I kind of figured that about you. You just seem like that emotional, sensitive kind of guy that rips people's heads off.
That's the first thought.
He was an MMA fighter too, you guys. He fought in the cage too. So, cry. All right. What makes you cry?
Honestly, softness, things that are sensitive. Seeing softness in people, seeing hurt in people, seeing tenderness, kindness, sacrifice in people. That is humbling because it moves you to emulate those things.
Yeah. I was watching a reel the other night. You guys know what reels are. You've got phones and everything now. But it was reels of soldiers coming home without telling their kids at school they were coming home. And I get teared up just thinking about this. I see this little girl come out. She was probably about 12 to 13-ish. She's right at that age where I'm going to be a teenager. I'm not quite yet. I don't know whether to, play with My Little Pony or be thinking about future prom dates, kind of a deal. So she was standing there in the hallway, and her dad, still dressed in all of his army stuff, comes around the corner, and she sees him, and she looks at him like right through him because she is not expecting him. And then it hits her, and you see her start to shake. And then she goes up to give her dad a hug, and then she realizes this is my dad who I haven't seen in, who knows how long, a year, whatever. And she jumps up and wraps her arms and legs around him, buries her face into his neck, and just begins to weep. That gets me. That's the kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's do both. Laugh. So I just told you that was mine, and I wasn't even supposed to do the cry. I'll start then. Laugh. What makes me laugh? I'm trying to, boy, this is a tough one. What makes me belly laugh? I can laugh at some joke or something someone's told, but what is it that makes me belly laugh? It's probably when I see pets do stupid things.
See, that's why I shouldn't let you go first.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you see an animal do, like a reel even of something with some pets doing some dumb thing, a cat stuck on a fan going around and around your, ceiling because he jumped up to grab the cord.
You talk about the real stuff. When they have a dog superimposed with a person putting words into his mouth that looks that are saying the most goofy, sometimes can be maybe borderline inappropriate, but
right.
But I think that way. But what animals might be thinking and doing. And
some of those dog videos can be kind of rough.
But they okay, but they make me laugh.
Let me say that again.
An imperfect man.
Sometimes those dog videos make me rough.
Yeah, I got it.
Wow.
See, he knows my jokes.
It just wasn't funny.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
This is my 14-year-old at home. She's like, you get all these bad dad jokes. And I'm like, they're collectibles. Write them down. You're going to want these someday.
Yeah. Or not. It's fine.
Exactly.
Okay. In the interest of time here. Okay. Brett D. Longwell. He's got D in his profile name, so I guess we can read it. I'm sorry. Okay. So Brett, why is it so difficult to be honest with each other when we're all in the same boat? You'd think it'd be easier.
Wow. This is actually, this is a great question because it kind of leads into where I think the podcast is going to go. I think we'll see what the Holy Spirit does. But why is it so difficult for us to be honest with each other when we're all in the same boat? I'm going to answer this, then I'm going to go back to the bio and then kind of walk us in that way. I think we all, again, I've talked before about a man's need for respect. You know, a man struggles with respect only when he feels like he's not getting what he thinks he deserves. That's usually when it'll set us off as a trigger. So why aren't men, honest when we're in the same boat? I think part of it is because we really don't either understand who we really are in Christ, that our identity is in him and not in, the things that we do, how we look, the money we have, the body type, whatever. So I think we pose, and I've talked about this. I think everyone, not just men, women can fall into the same thing as well. But one of the things that is I'm going to be, talking about this with Ken today as we're here. Some of the best conversations I've ever had, there's three places. On a road trip, we're going somewhere out west, whether we're going hunting or doing something, that kind of stirs that masculine soul a little bit. On a front porch overlooking the mountains where everything, you can see the majesty of God and how big he is, understanding how small we are, but yet he still loves us. And the other thing is just around a campfire. There's just something that happens around campfires with guys. We get honest. We talk about real stuff. And, we on the road, when Ken's gone hunting with me, how many times in Colorado? 3 or 4 times?
Like 4.
Yeah, out there. And we have a ball. I mean, we just goof off, tease each other the whole way there. But the beautiful thing is because we trust each other, because we know each other, we can razz each other, understanding we're just pulling each other's leg. But we really can get down to, I'm having a struggle right now, and I want you guys to pray with me. We have another buddy that that lives down in Indianapolis. One time he called us up on the phone, and he was having some heart issues. And he said, I want you guys to come. I just need to talk about it. And we processed. And, those are the kind of brothers that, you go to war with, so to speak. I think that's just really important stuff. Well, let me kind of get rolling here. Was that the last one?
Nope, I got.
Oh, you got another one?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, guys,
now this
come on.
One, yeah. Bruce Dykson wants to know, what is the best advice to tell a young man who's getting started as a husband? And really, wouldn't even have to be a young man. Like, what's advice for guys being started as a husband?
Yeah.
First marriage.
Ken, you want to roll with this?
Well, I don't know how much detail we want to get into, but as you know, I might have some experience with.
Well, yeah. Go give some advice, and we'll come back to that and want to walk into it. It'll make a little more sense.
I was really immature and made some immature decisions, and now coming to understand what the difference between contract and covenant is in a marriage, and understanding what it really means to commit in a covenantal state. In a contract, which I was doing much of the time, look, we have an agreement here, and you're going to do X and I'm going to do Y, and as long as that happens, everything's good. And if it doesn't happen, then the contract can be voided. And that's not scriptural. It's not biblical. It's not the relationship modeled for us with God or God with his people. And what I've come to understand is covenant best described for me, our pastor once said, agape love is a willingness to serve another person despite their willingness or ability to reciprocate. Now, If somebody loses the ability, we can make allowances for that. But you get into a committed relationship and somebody's simply unwilling, that's a difficult thing. But in a covenant relationship, somebody being unwilling does not give you license to change. It is a covenant that I will do regardless of what you do. And to save from a soulful place, I have committed the rest of my life, regardless of what you choose, because I made a covenant. And the covenant was not to my wife. The covenant was to God. Yeah. And when you go from an intellectual awareness of that to a deep, heartfelt, honor-filled commitment to that, you don't have a choice. You have relinquished the choice. And then it becomes really pretty simple. Since I have no choice, this is where I'm going to be the rest of my life. You will make choices based upon making that life the best life you have. And there's no room for thinking of anything else. And so when mentally you get in that place, to me, that's when you're prepared to be married. Yeah. And if you aren't in that place, you haven't really thought through that, then maybe it's not time to be married.
Yeah. I mean, I think so many of us, have made mistakes in our marriages that we look back and we say, man, if I'd have only known this at this time. But the beautiful thing is that God already knew, and he had a plan like he did with David, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when David had the affair. Why would God allow him to do that? Because he loved David. David had to learn something that he was only going to learn through making a mistake. And I think I said it last week with Josh Kaufman when he was on here. I said, you don't know something until you know it, and you can't see it until you see it. Well, anyhow, let me kind of just go back, take a step back here. Let me introduce a guy who you just heard. I said I already told you he could bench over 500 pounds, probably closer to 6 in his heyday, but you can tell he's smart too. And I've got a new shirt that actually, I brought one in for Eric today that I take it to my events when I'm speaking, and it says, when you sit with warriors, the conversation is different. That's the whole thing with this whole Unleashed podcast. And you're hearing it right now. When we get into the real stuff, the conversation is different. It's the real stuff. It's not the poser and look at what I can do or what I've done kind of a deal. It's about look at my mistakes sometimes, but they don't hold me hostage. They don't label me because my identity is in Christ. So let's go back. What was that guy's name that used to have the Twilight? Was it Twilight Zone? He goes, imagine if you will, traveling through time, space, another dimension, whatever.
It probably sounds like Twilight.
I don't think it was one of those shows. Yeah. Well, let's go back. And I want to kind of just introduce, Ken, we first met, I don't remember what year it was. It was probably around 1981, 82. And you were going to, back then it was Anderson College. You were playing football there. What year did you come in?
80.
Okay, yeah. I waited 3 years because I knew I was a little bit older than you, but I was trying to think, when was that? But you were playing football at AU, and I was looking at your AC back then. I was looking at your bio. So let me just kind of give you a little bit of this. It says, Ken Dodson, his last name, came to Anderson University from Vero Beach, Florida, to play football for the Ravens in the fall of 1980. He earned 4 letters on the football field and left as one as Anderson College's most decorated players. I still see some of those records, when I get a chance to go over there and look around. He was a 2-time All-Conference selection, 84 and 85, 3-time NAIA All-American, 82, 84, 85. A member, and explain this to me, also a member of the NCAA Little American team in 1982, All-American team. What?
The Little I didn't know. It came out with my name on it, and I had to ask my buddies, what is this? The NAIA All-American was for the NAIA classifications, National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. Little All-American included the NCAA. So if you were selected for that included NCAA Division II, Division III, and NAIA 1 and 2. So it's a higher level.
Gotcha. And then I think the thing that, and I was talking about this, we rode together over here in my truck today, and I said, I didn't realize, I knew that you had the sack record, but it wasn't even close to the next guy. When you were in college, the one year, was it your sophomore year that you had 16 sacks, or was it? Yeah.
Yes, 16 sacks in 10 games.
And you had 45 over 4 years I mean, those are some huge numbers.
Well, 46, but who's counting?
Right. There we go. There
you
we
jammed
go.
me up there because you knew it. You said 46 on the way over here, and now you tried to just to trigger a reaction.
Oh, and I was trying to figure this out in my head. I'm going, man, in 4 years you had that many sacks. I'm going, that's like, what did I say, 11.2 sacks every season if you averaged them out. I mean, those are some big numbers. Even in the NFL, you're looking at these guys, those are big numbers. So, you know, Ken, he went back to Anderson after I'll get into his college stuff here in a second, or the football career. But after you did some time, playing football, and we'll talk about it, you went back and you got, was it 2 or 3 masters?
2.
Just 2? I was expecting, your performance, you'd be like at 10 or something by now.
No, in fact, this will tell you something about why you're trying to make me sound good. People ask me why I have 2 master's degrees in the same discipline in business. Well, the first was I was too chicken to try to go get my MBA at first. So I went and got a master's of science in management because that's what I was doing at the time. And when I decided to leave the corporate world and go out on my own, I had to have an MBA. So I begrudgingly went back and got another one where I had to have economics, finance, and accounting. So I wasn't sure I could do.
Well, so before all this brainiac stuff, he's a brainiac. Before all that stuff, when I knew you in college playing football, I mean, you were, and again, I'm just going to go back to those days and remember, it was like big man on campus, and I mean big man on campus, strongest man on campus. He's got all these records, at the college. And when you got hurt, was it your junior or senior year?
I was hurt. I missed 2 seasons. I missed my freshman year after the first game of the season with an MCL left leg, and I missed my junior year with a ACL reconstruction of my right knee.
How many surgeries have you had now?
25 to date.
Holy cow. Oh, man, what was that television show, $6 Million Man or whatever it was? You've got to be above that by now.
Yeah, don't feel like
Jeez.
it.
But you got out of college, and I remember that. I remember going and watching the games and just watching the line to see if you were going to get to the quarterback, just dominating everybody. So when you got out of school, you were being scouted, obviously, because you got picked up. Now, who was it first that picked you up for their training camp?
The Broncos.
The Broncos. And I can remember you telling me a story. Now, how big were you at the time? You're 6'3", right?
Well, I've shrunk.
Okay,
I'm old
we
now.
all have.
6'3" and about 285.
Yeah. That's big boy. And so he's going all the way to Denver. And what kind of car were you driving at the time?
Did what rookies do. I got back then it wasn't even a Nissan yet. I think it was still a Dodson 280Z.
Right. And they're like built for a family of 6 or something.
Well,
or is it for one person? How?
For Lilliputians, maybe.
Right. And then his co-pilot all the way to Denver was
a very unhappy Doberman Pinscher.
And what was that Doberman Pinscher doing on the trip?
She was mourning the recent loss of the puppies that had found homes and still lactating.
So you had a lactating Doberman Pinscher driving 1,100 miles to Denver, Colorado. And was it a cool day?
I spent a week in Kansas one day. The story goes, so I'm driving this car that was not designed to pull a trailer, and I had a U-Haul, and I had this Doberman in the back. And interesting thing happens when you're pulling a trailer with a car that wasn't designed for it. I couldn't go over 45 miles an hour, and I couldn't turn the air conditioning on because it would overheat. So I'm driving across Kansas, which you and I have done
many times, yep.
right? At 45 miles an hour with a very unhappy
We're doing
Doberman.
85.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Wow. That's a long trip.
Worst trip I ever took. But no question. Not close.
And was your dog like a big baby with you? I mean,
she was an independent thinker and could be spicy and fun. But right then, no, she was just not happy, right? She was physically not happy, emotionally not happy.
Yeah, I know that drive. No thanks, not with a lactating Doberman. No. Okay, so you got done, you went out there, and you signed with Denver for their training camp, or whatever it would be. Right. So then what happened with that one?
Signed draft night of 85. The Bronco scout had come to our house and just stayed there. So his intention was to sign me right there. In the event I wasn't drafted, there were several teams that had me on their draft board. I ended up not being drafted, so I signed with the Broncos right there. I went out about a week later for the mini camps. They did all the testing that they had for us, and then they told us they would let us know. All the Denver draft picks came back out for the summer camps, and their top free agents that had performed well in the mini camp, they invited out. So I got the phone call that I was one of the ones that was invited to come out and spend the summer out there. So that would have been why it would have been in May I made that trip, because of course Anderson University at the time.
That was in 85?
That was 85
Yeah.
going into 86, right. And they were not set up to manage people going off to the NFL. And so I just dropped out of school. And
Right.
I went out there and, of course, ended up with Fs in my entire last semester, because you got to finish them at a certain time while I was in Denver.
Yeah, yeah.
And so went out there, stayed there, and then into training camp.
Interesting. I finished up with Fs, but I've got 2 master's degrees.
Well,
just put that in the back of your head somewhere, because
maturity
that's
and
important for you guys
focus is a
listening.
wonderful thing.
So I'm curious, with the Broncos, who was the first person you met, like with the team or anything, when you got there?
Well, the one person everybody would know of. The first person I met was John Elway.
Oh, wow.
And
That was the first person?
very first person. They met me at the airport. They picked me up at the airport, one of their runners, and they brought me over to 5700 Logan Street, which was where they were at the time. And it was in the afternoon. And so the rookies and free agents had the facility in the morning to work out, and the veterans had it in the afternoon. And so went in. They introduced me to Al Miller, who was the strength and conditioning coach at the time. And so he was showing me around the place. Well, John Elway was there working out. And I know, coming from Indiana, that a lot of people don't like John Elway.
Right. Yep.
I'm going to tell you, he was one of the nicest guys I'd ever met. I mean, this is John Elway. Now, he was only in his second or third year, but he was still John Elway.
Right.
And I'm an undrafted free agent from Anderson University. And they introduced me, shook my hand, Ken, welcome to Broncos, and I can do for you. And he was a really stand-up guy, as most of the people I met there were.
Did you have a chance to lift with him in there at all?
No, because the veterans, vast majority of them were in the afternoons. Well, I would have been one of the rookie
Gotcha.
free agents, and we had to go in the morning.
I'm just curious. This is my brain going, but how, compared to the other guys doing your position or some similar positions, I mean, were all those guys benching, like 500 to 600 pounds?
Don't know, because when I got out there, I was in a hurry to show them this. And
no.
Al Miller said, well, I'm not interested in seeing that at all. He said, any moron can lay on a bench and push weight off his chest. I want to see you do these things. And so he was an early adopter of the European Soviet bloc kind of training. So we did we'd bench press and we'd squat, but we did a lot of Olympic lifting.
Okay.
Power cleans, push jerks, things like that required some athletic skill to do, and a lot of explosive power. He was training athletes, not power lifters.
So then how long were you there with the training camp with the Broncos before you moved on to your next location?
I was there all through the summer, into training camp, got into training camp, got dinged up a little bit, and got released. They were a really good team. They went to the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you don't know when you come out of a really small college and don't have any agent, they didn't have a first-round pick that year, but their first-round pick they got in the third round. It was their first pick, and was Tony Colorado, who was a nose tackle out of USC.
Yeah,
Well,
so you got limited choices. You're not even picking to the third round.
Well, yeah, but that's who the point is. That's who they went and got. Well, they signed me as a nose tackle too, so
Gotcha.
makes it really hard.
So then your next stop was where?
When I got released there, I stayed out there, spent the season coaching at a local high school, and came back here to finish. Here, being back to Indiana to finish school, and was working through that. And the next season came along, and I had done some internships with the Colts because they trained at Anderson.
Right.
And got to know some of their coaches and stuff. And Willie Broughton was the guy's name, was the youngest player in the NFL at the time, was a big nose tackle, really a good player, good guy, got hurt. And so they were looking to have somebody else fill in. And so the Colts knew me. They had been one of the teams that was interested in me before the draft the year before. So they signed me to a contract then. And I spent about a month with them. And for those of you who have ever, what's the movie, The Replacements, Keanu Reeves? That was 1987. And the team went on strike.
Oh, man, talk about bad things happening. So, go ahead.
Well, I don't think it was. Look, I was playing with house money, right? So you're being really kind, okay, about what I could do at Anderson. And I had some skills that were rather unique. Not in the NFL, okay? I mean,
you think about how many guys actually make it in? What's the percentage?
I think it's 1.5 or 2% of college just get a shot.
Yeah,
that doesn't make it.
Yeah, I was trying to think about that kind of stuff in your life, having to train like that, focus, stay disciplined. How much was it as a kid motivated, wanting to be in the NFL? How much of it was discipline in your everyday life to get to those kind of, because you've been successful in business too, and that's something I wanted to talk about. You went back and got your master's. How has that kind of discipline carried you, through with what you do now with the ups and downs? And
well, I'm going to throw you a softball here.
Okay.
All right. Because I know you're new at this.
I'm drowning here.
Nobody thought, when I was in high school, nobody thought I'd go to college. And in college, nobody's thinking I was going to the NFL. So I wasn't working towards that. Everybody that plays imagines, right, fantasizes, dreams. I came to Anderson with the goal of being an All-American. I had buddies of mine that we were walking back to our dorm one night after walking to a store, and we were talking about what our goals were. And that was it. Wanted to be an All-American. So I worked to achieve that goal. But the softball is this. We were talking earlier, and I wrote it down, and what I wrote down was insecurity. And I forgot now the topic, because I thought if it came around to that, but we didn't. I worked and did what I did and didn't realize it at the time, but ultimately it was insecurity. I didn't come out of high school as a big, highly recruited kid, And I, as an adult, said this to some people close to me one time. I said, if you look at my resume, I've went to college, was a 3-time All-American. I still hold some records there. 2 different NFL teams, was a global vice president of a $1 billion company by the time I was 40, and I've run my own business, and I have 2 master's degrees, and I've got a couple of black belts in karate, and I fought in the cages. And I'm a fraud. Okay? So what that does is it lets me go into my virtual file cabinet in whatever arena I'm in and pull out the thing, right, that says, hey, don't challenge me, don't question me, because here's my credentials. It really comes from insecurity. So everything that I did when I was in college was trying to be enough, trying to be good enough. Because the team that we had there then for a small college NAIA Division II school was good. They were really good. And there were a number of players there that I just wanted to get on the field with. I just wanted to be one of. So trying to be enough. And so all along the way, that instilled habits that are with me today. And we've talked about those things, right? It's are you enough?
Yep. Yeah, I think, what Eldridge talked about in his book, Wild at Heart, it's the biggest question. Do I have what it takes?
Right.
Am I enough? In that moment when I'm called upon to come through, can I, will I, do I have what it takes? My question, as you were saying that, I was sitting here thinking, because I know your story, the stuff we don't have time for those, and some of it we will talk about, but I was thinking about this. At what point in your life, with all we all do it, we all do that, I want to show you this part of me, but I don't want to show you this part of me because I want you to respect me, right? A man's other need, second biggest one is, I need your respect. At what point in your life, what age do you think it was? Can you go back and go, this was when all of a sudden I came face to face, not with somebody else, but with myself? When I could really go, this is what I'm doing because of this.
If I understand the question, that didn't happen for decades, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to God about this the other night. I spent so much of my life living for myself. Now, most people who knew me then would have said, I'm a good guy, kind to people, go to church, do the stuff. I was living for myself, completely for myself. And during that, God blessed me. I was fortunate. I was blessed, and made more money than I thought I would make, accomplished more things than I thought I would. And the time came, I'm 61 now, probably in early 50s, where God decided that it was time to use me for his purposes and to allow me to see what life looked like when I'm really on my own. And it wasn't pretty. Yeah. And so many things, because you start to think it really is about you, right? When all along you've done these things and you've accomplished things that nobody else thought you would, you think it's about you. And the process of God disabusing me of that notion was a long, painful one. But it led to brokenness that, as you know, the process leads to redemption, right? Yeah. And so I'm trying to remember the actual question about that you led, because, again, I'm...
Yeah, it was really more about this. It was like, at what point in your life were you able to really look at yourself like you're doing, like almost you're talking to someone across the table that you can see everything about them? When did that happen to yourself?
That happened in my early 50s. God allowed enough trials and tribulations and consequences in my life for me to see myself for who I really was. And it was only when that happened that the process of God, through the work of the Holy Spirit, could start to change me. And that process continues today and will continue the rest of my life. But that's when I was able to see myself. And then everything changed. So, we've talked about some of the things that I've done, and I've said this to you, and I've said this to some other really close friends of mine. None of that's important to me anymore. I don't feel about it the way I used to. I don't cherish it. It's almost sometimes uncomfortable to talk about it. And I understood that in this environment you won't want to do that some. But what I would really rather talk about is I had all those things and I wasn't fulfilled, and it wasn't real. And when God broke me of that, then those things finally became really valuable, because sometimes it opened up, whether it's the business that I have, or being able to talk about sports or things that I've done, that it opens up opportunities to talk to people, oftentimes in my companies, but and it creates a starting point for me to have conversation. But it's a starting point from humility, because none of that stuff really matters.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And I have had the opportunity to experience watching God manifest himself in my life and change me. And you know how insignificant being a 3-time All-American is compared to watching the sovereign God of the universe perform miracles in your life? Once you've experienced that, it is life-changing.
Ken, this is why I had you on. When we first talked, you go, why do you want to have me on? I said, because here's the thing. When a man looks at a model of what they think about a man, just generally, strong, driven, not afraid, all these different things that men go out and we try to conquer, whether it's in business or whether it's in fighting or women or whatever those things are. The reason I wanted you to have you on, and you said it a minute ago about, I'm not sure why we're going down this road. That's exactly why. Because guys need to hear this, that the end pursuit, what we think it's going to look like, and when we really want what God wants for us, it's going to look different, but it's going to take time to get to that place. It's going to get to that place where we do see God as that sovereign God who made all this, but yet he made me. How did that work? And we begin to fall in love with this incredibly powerful God who made us and is helping us deconstruct the poser within us so we can see what's most important. And here's something that I wanted to say, and I just, when I hadn't seen you in a number of years, and I had just written, what book was it? It was Into the Wilds. And I had maybe made a post on social media or something, and the next thing I know, my wife was going to be throwing me a book party, right? And you show up at the book party, and you came in, and you kind of waited. You were kind of standing around. We went outside. You said, come here a minute. We went outside. You said, I don't know how God is calling me to help you. I don't know what it looks like. Maybe it's financially or something right now. But whatever it is that God has blessed me with, I believe in what you're doing, and I want to come alongside and help you. You didn't just give me words. For several years, you did that. It wasn't a tax write-off for you. It was nothing. It was saying, I believe in this ministry and what you're doing to reach men, and I want to come alongside that. You would have never said that on here. You would have never said that to anybody. But that's why I wanted you to talk, because, guys, we look at last week, we had the winner of The Voice. Josh Kaufman was on, and he came down and he said, when everyone thought I was at my peak, my highest, I was actually at my lowest. It's when I was the most lost, questioning God. You sat here and you talked about, I was really trying to be somebody, and it was all about me when I was younger. And we look at those things and we go, fame, fortune, popularity, all that kind of stuff, and we go, that's what I want. But God says, well, okay, I'll give you just enough rope, right? You go ahead, try it. How's that working for you? And eventually we humbly come back and we go, God, I kind of messed some things up here, and I don't want that. I want what you wanted in the very beginning for me, but I know that I had to go through that stuff. Like we talked about David, I had to make some mistakes to get to that place. Guys, I hope you're hearing what I'm talking about here, because this kind of brotherhood is real. It's not the fake stuff where we sit around and we talk about all the trophies we've taken or the fast cars. That's all fun, but it will never have anything to do with who you really are. The best conversations we were talking about, for me, were those ones when we're on these road trips, because we all kind of pose and do our fun stuff, but at the end of that conversation, we're actually like it's sitting at a campfire where we're talking about the real deal, the real stuff. I was thinking about our trip to Colorado a minute ago, and this is you see Ken and you go, yeah, he's a big dude, and then we get out to an environment, because you hadn't ever really done this kind of hunting before, and so I was bow hunting and he had a gun, he had a bear tag. And he was trying to, get, I think at that time you had like a 308, an AR platform, wasn't it? Right. And then you got was it a 6.5 Creedmoor the next time?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was trying to hold that AR, that 308, and this thing was a massive heavy gun. And he's walking around like special ops with this huge thing. And it's so funny because he's sitting in this right of way. I said, hey, this will be a good place to sit, because you can see the bears, you can see when they're crossing sometimes, going to get water or bedding or food or whatever they're doing. I said, man, just get your chair, get off to the side, make sure you got your orange. You had to have his blaze orange hat or whatever it was at the time. And I'm all camouflage, right? Well, that's my world. The NFL, to have some linebacker come screaming, running at me, I'd be like, help. But here I was in my environment, and I get all camoed up, and I got my face paint on, and he's sitting down there, and I can see him from this little lofty spot. He doesn't know I'm there. I snuck into this thing real well, and he's got his phone, so I start texting him. Hey, Ken, you hearing banjos yet? And then I think I texted, that's a mighty pretty mouth you got there, boy. And he's looking around like, where the heck are you? I'm going to kill you.
You're about to enter my world now.
But it was just one of those things, but it's got to be a totally different thing. You've got a 285-pound linebacker wanting to rip your head off. But then when you get into an environment that you're not used to, where now you've got a 400-pound black bear with 3.5-inch claws and canines, and you're not used to this, I can just imagine what that is like in that moment of being humbled, going, yeah, I can handle most things. I'm not quite sure what to do with this one. And what's funny is the one year we were out there, you were up on this like a sniper on this one point, and the bear came in down below you, and you shot, and you came back, and man, that was a big bear. And we tracked it. We're like, I don't know whatever happened. There's no blood. We couldn't figure this thing out. So that was in the morning. So it gets to be evening, and I'm elk hunting, and I had a bear tag, and I have a bear come walking by me. He wasn't limping. He wasn't doing anything. So I, put an arrow through him, and we finally, get to the bear, and in his forearm, I think you can call it that, in his leg, perfect hole goes right between the bones, never did anything. He wasn't even walking with a limp. So we realized that's the bear that Ken had shot that morning. I ended up shooting the thing in the evening, but the funny part is when we go to get the thing out, it had gone in the deepest stuff you have ever walked through in your life. And Tim, our buddy we were hunting with, we're like, man, how are we going to get this thing out of here? Let's call Ken. So we get these saws out and we cut a path. Hey, Ken, come here. He comes walking. We're not sure how to get this thing out of here. He grabs this bear, a 300-pound bear, just grabs the thing and pulls it all the way out of there.
That was the moment I realized what I was invited for.
Right.
Because I'm the world's worst hunter, but I can pull heavy stuff up a hill.
But the thing is this. When you need brothers to show up for you, everyone's got a different gift and a different talent. Why are you calling me to do this? Or why are you asking me to go on this trip? Whatever it is. We all have gifts and strengths, and none of them are going to look the same. But they all work together for that, whatever that purpose is, that we're trying to do. And I know this about Ken. If I needed anyone, I'm not talking about physically to come watch my back, someone who's going to be there as a brother, he'd be there in a heartbeat, whether it's on the phone, whether at my doorstep, let's go for a talk. And that's kind of where I wanted to bring things, kind of back down to with all of this. That one question that came out earlier about, when it said about why is it that men struggle with being honest when we're all in the same boat? What is it that keeps us from calling those brothers on the phone and saying, I need to be honest with you? Man, Ken, for you, I can imagine that was even harder. Here's what I remember, and I'll set it up with this, and we'll kind of wind down with this. I get a phone call maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and you had a Harley, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you had a Harley, of course. And you're riding this thing, and you're riding around the campus where we went to school together. And you called me up and you said, Brent, I'm here. I'm riding around campus, and I'm remembering, the glory days and all that kind of stuff. But I'm realizing, I'm getting older, and I'm not that maybe that alpha male like we would think about, like I once was, that kind of a thing. And I understand as I'm getting older, my limitations now, it makes me feel weak sometimes. And it's something that I have to renew my mind with and remember that we're all aging at the same pace, and that each age brings with it some new wisdom or something, a gift that God gave us so that we can give it to someone else. That day when you called me on the phone and you were saying, man, I'm riding around here, what was going through your head, and where did God take that?
The short answer is when God reveals himself to you. Not in an intellectual way, but in an experiential way. When it actually occurs to you that there really is a God, and he is sovereign, and that he cares enough about you to have a relationship with you. And so while I was there, it was kind of a nostalgic thing where I remembered all those times when I was the person you described, and I enjoyed that. And yet I knew I wasn't that person anymore. And I didn't quite know who I was or where this was going. And the thing that came out of that I learned, that I just scribbled down here, a thing cannot change the nature of itself unless it is acted upon by something outside of it. That was a selfish, prideful, independent, confident person. Many of those qualities are admired, but your greatest strength can become your greatest weakness. And I was a sovereign unto myself. That's the way I felt. Okay. And over the course of this redemptive process, I watched myself change. And much of it I can't take credit for. That's what's interesting. This person that I had been my entire life, that is hardwired into my DNA. Don't be mistaken. The person that you see now, I still know who I was. And in the right circumstances called for it, I'd still be that person. But I watched God through the Holy Spirit change me. And that's what I realized. A thing cannot change itself unless it's acted upon by something greater than that outside of it. That happened. So I got to see the sovereign God of the universe. He opened my eyes enough to see that he was changing me. Well, imagine what that revelation looks like, right? When you understand how insignificant you are, but God chose to act upon me, to change me, to go through a redemptive process, that he now gives me opportunities to do things like this with you, which is, as you know, uncomfortable for me, because I feel way more comfortable in those one-on-one serendipitous moments when God brings a broken man into my life and it's just me and him and nobody knows about it. That's where I'm way more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because even then the words just come. It's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you actually experience that, there's nothing else like it. And you can't ever go back.
One of the things that I want to say before we wrap up here is this. Remember that saying, it's better to be a warrior or in a garden than a gardener in a war? Yeah. That's what, when I think about you personally, you have the ability, if in the right circumstance, to be a monster in a good way. I mean, if something needed to be done to protect someone, you would have no second thoughts, no matter. And I know you just came through some surgeries and all that kind of stuff. I still know you well enough. If you had one leg left, you'd be kicking somebody. But it's better to be that warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And if you're listening to this right now and you're kind of going, man, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. When you heard every one of my guests that I've been having on, we've talked about the things that we've done in the order to show what God has done through all that stuff. So what I want you to think about right now is this one last question I'll leave you, and then we're going to be going into some more conversations. If you are a member of Unleashed Plus, you'll be able to get into the Unleashed podcast and go through what we go after this. But I just wanted to say this. When you're struggling, you're trying to figure out, why am I not finding that peace and contentment in my life? Serving God or looking and finding my purpose, whatever that thing is. The enemy has a way of throwing idols in our face. It's what he does. He wants to throw something that could be fame, could be money, it could be women, it could be whatever that thing was. And how do we know then if we have an idol in our life that's taking our attention away from God or the things that he wants? How do we identify the idols? Here's how you do it. You sit down and you write down the thing that if that were taken away from you tomorrow, and I'm not talking about like losing a child, I'm not talking about something like that. But if those things that you find your worth and value from, if one of those things was taken away tomorrow, that it would cause you to have unhealthy emotions, you've just found one of your idols. And I can't stress how important it is to be honest. Like when I asked Ken, I said, when were you able to really look and be honest with yourself? This is hard. This is one of the hardest things to do. I've heard Navy SEALs talk about this, the reckoning and coming back and sitting on the edge of a bed and being honest with myself. What are those things that I am putting before God that are hurting my relationship with him and the purpose he has for me? You begin to identify those things by looking at them, writing it down. What are the ones causing you unhealthy emotions? Ken said, the only way you're going to be changed is from an external source. It begins internally with my surrender and saying, God, I want what you want. And God, I'm asking you to fill me now. Put my feet on this path as a warrior for you, whatever you call me to do. You just heard, Ken talk about, here's this guy who did all these cool things, right? But when it came down to the question, what's going to make you laugh or what's going to make you cry, he picked the one about cry first because he has a tender heart. Guys, we are called to be warriors in a garden. You were given a strength by God. You are this resistance that we've been talking about to go and change the world. Your strength is needed. Get on your knees and then get on your feet. We'll see you next time.